Okay, I'm going to read a very interesting story to you, very quick. It's only going to be a couple of minutes, called The Walking Man Story. I wrote this about 15 years ago, and as far as I'm concerned, it's probably one of the most important stories you could ever read or have read to you, because it explains the basic structure of how neurosis and later mental sickness works. And all of us are neurotic, all of us have been subject to significant trauma, including myself, some more than others. And it just shows you in very clear structural terms, the walking man story, how it all works in the brain. Now, an important thing to realize is that the neurotic system is natural. It's a necessary system that helps us to deal with an overwhelming situation. A situation that is so painful that the pain has to be blocked and reconverted into something else for us to cope and survive. So it's not like something that people should be embarrassed about or ashamed of. It's just the way it is. And again, it's so common. All of us suffer from it. All of us have been traumatized, and true trauma to stress is not pains that we feel, but believe it or not, pains that we don't feel, because the pain is so extreme that our brain has to block it off. And the reason why I'm going to talk about this is because finally the whole topic of mental sickness and childhood trauma is starting to come into the political arena. About 30 years too late. Well, it's not too late, but 30 years overdue, because it's such a sensitive topic for so many people. But actually, yeah, it's great that we are starting to talk about it now, because it is immensely important. And childhood trauma, child abuse, and especially including all the abuses that we don't understand to be abuse, such as infantile damage, the things that we unwittingly do to our children when they're babies, all that sort of thing is actually, in the industrialized world at least, the number one issue, the number one problem of our time. We really do need to develop a good basic structural understanding of what we're dealing with. And nothing does that faster and easier, I believe, than the walking man story, which is what I'm about to give you from here. Okay. The walking man story. How and why a neurosis is formed. And if I look funny, it's because I'm reading it from my computer, which is not easy when I've got a flash in my face. Okay, so here we go. Once upon a time, there was a walking man. The walking man loved to walk. One day, as the walking man was walking, he came up to a bridge. The walking man casually walked across the bridge until he got to about halfway. It was then that he looked down and made a horrible discovery. What he discovered was that the bridge was only about 1 foot wide, and he could slip and fall to his death at any time. This terrified the walking man, and to the point where his fear threatened to overwhelm him, too much to consciously deal with. Of course, the walking man could not afford to feel his fear if he was to cope with the situation and survive. His consciousness needed to be devoted towards survival. So what happened? What happened was the walking man became unconscious. That is, unconscious to the sensation of fear as induced by the dangerous bridge. This cut-off process is called repression. It's a natural survival mechanism. It's not that the feeling of fear just disappeared. It's that it became unconscious. Our conscious brain blocked it off. It did not destroy it. As the walking man's fear became detached from his consciousness, his defense, which was to walk in a straight as possible line, was still operating, as it obviously must. However, as the defense was isolated from its feeling, it had effectively become a compulsion. And I should clarify here that the need to act out is experienced as an urge, a trauma-induced drive, a compulsion. Mostly, we only feel the urge, not the repression that's creating it. So the walking man walked fearlessly to the end of the bridge in his compulsive manner. Whoops! When the walking man got to the end of the bridge, we made a very interesting discovery. Although the walking man reached the end of the bridge and was on open, safe land, he was still walking in as straight as possible line. Why? When the walking man got to the end of the bridge, he entered open land with a repressed feeling. that repressed feeling was constantly pushing to get into his consciousness. The repression made him feel as though he was still walking on dangerous ground. In response to this, he started head-tripping over the possibility of earthquakes. His brain rationalized the fear in the open land context. To keep the fear out of his consciousness, he continued to act out. He continued to walk in a highly cautious, straight as possible line. From the walking man's viewpoint, he is not responding to an internally generated fear, but only what he interprets as external reality. But he is wrong. He cannot deduct that his feeling is a subjective reaction and that his brain is merely looking for an external rationalization for his feeling state to project onto. The great confusion for the walking man is the belief that the external situation came first, as opposed to the feeling. That's vital to understand that. It's the feeling that comes up that drives the thinking, drives the interpretations, the overreactions, everything. And it begins with what's in us, overwhelmingly, not what's in the external environment. Although, of course, the external environment will tend to trigger what's in us, which leads to what we call neurotic overreaction. We're all full of those. Right. Okay, he can't be blamed for this interpretation, as a subjective feeling qualifies the perceived situation as being the cause of his feelings, because that is exactly how he experiences it. He cannot usually see that his today is really just a symbolic derivative of his yesterday. Right, well, that's basically the end of the story, and I'll just give you some post notes that I threw on there. Author's comment, my comment. The vast majority of us are stuck in our childhoods in the same way that the walking man is stuck on the bridge. It's that simple. Early childhood trauma, in particular traumatic deprivations associated with the lack of genuine parental love and very basic infantile trauma, forces us into a psychological prison that ultimately overwhelms adult life. We basically remain children, emotionally, acting out our past in an adult context. And that is all of us. Cure. The only way the walking man can get off the bridge is to get back on it. The old blocked pain signal needs to be reconnected. This is often referred to as reliving, but in truth it is not. Because when you reconnect to blocked pain, you are consciously experiencing it for the first time. Indeed, it's through the process of repression and not feeling the pain originally. That's what leads to all the problems. That's what makes the past, as I explained through the story, makes us stuck in the past in our present. Okay. De-repression is a natural process that will only happen when we feel safe enough, when the trust and support is there. If it happens prematurely, and this is important, through force or invasive manipulation, the pain is never integrated and the past remains neurotically in the present. Yeah. If you're ever going to go down the road of regressive psychotherapy, I firmly recommend you investigate Dr. Arthur Janoff's Primal Center in Los Angeles. I mean, there are probably a lot of people that can help you into your pain all over the world, doing what they call is primal therapy, but bluntly, there are so many people doing it, and I know this for a fact, and Dr. Arthur Janoff goes on about it as well. There's so many people doing it who really shouldn't be doing it. They don't really know what they're doing, and when you're screwing with people on that level, you're playing a dangerous game. You need to let this process happen naturally with people who know what they're doing, because it is potentially dangerous when people are pushed further than they can go, and they're basically trying to deal with pains that are too powerful and trying to deal with them too soon, because that can really screw with someone, and at the most extreme case scenario can even drive them to madness. It's not a good idea. It's something that needs to happen carefully and in the right way. So again, to stress, if you ever are getting excited about the possibility of regressive psychotherapy, and I say good on you, you really want to have a conversation with the people at Dr. Arthur Janoff's Primal Center. I mean, that's one place that I could recommend, and I would have a lot of faith in myself. Like, if I ever get regressive psychotherapy, which I'd like to do if I could, all the way to Los Angeles, that's where I would go. And I've looked at this for a very long time. So there we go. Right, carrying on with it. I should note that people often confuse de-repression with confronting your past on a detached level. Looking back at what happened to you and crying about it is totally different from actually experiencing it as though the trauma is happening to you in the moment. Crying about having been in danger is not the same as feeling like you literally are in danger, which again is what happens when we truly open up to our pain. If you're not reconnecting to the old pain, which is what reliving is, it's basically truly reconnecting to it, then all you are doing is playing games around it. At best, all you're doing is boosting defenses and keeping the pain blocked. Now, virtually every psychotherapy that exists, which uses drugs or therapeutic techniques and all that sort of thing, boils down to neurosis management. Now, I have no contempt for that because, as long as you've got all that pain in you, it does need to be managed so you can get on with your life. But we should be very clear about what it represents: neurosis management, not neurosis removal. If you want to get rid of a neurosis, get rid of that fundamental compulsive process and your inherent vulnerability to overreactions and all those other problems, you've got to do the deep root canal on your brain. Basically, you've got to reconnect to that old ancient pain blocked in your system from very early childhood, usually, and infancy, and integrate it, because that's the only way you can leave the past in the past rather than having the pain within your past act on you so you feel like you still are in your past. That's the most simple way I can put it. Again, it's just like that walking man situation. The only way to get off the bridge is to psychologically, emotionally get back on it and deal with that unfinished business. Okay, the mass cure. The mass cure for mental sickness will never be therapy, and that's based on my assumption that most people just do not want to do regressive psychotherapy. They don't understand it, and for understandable reasons, they're afraid of it too, especially if they've got a tremendous amount of severe pain, which they are too close to. They often get really spooked by the idea of going into that bad dream. Even though, and I'll stress this, it's most people, from what I understand, when they go through regressive psychotherapy, it's a tremendous relief for them to finally feel the pain rather than being controlled by it. It's tremendous relief. And your brain only delivers as much pain in little pieces as you can accommodate and deal with. It's not like, guess what, buddy, you're going straight to hell. It's not like that. I mean, it's very painful, but apparently it's very painful, but at the same time, in a sense, it feels good, because it's so good to feel pain at last rather than constantly battling away from it. And I had a natural regressive, a primal, as they call it, thing like that when I was about 17 years old, and it was exactly like that for me. Saddest feeling I ever remember feeling when that pain came up, and I naturally went through it, but it was a tremendous relief to say goodbye to it. Do I regret having felt what I felt with that repressed pain? Absolutely not. I wish I could do more of it spontaneously, but I can't. Anyway, okay, so the mass cure for mental sickness will never be therapy, the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff, from what I can see so far at least. It will be prevention, overwhelmingly. And here is my own contribution to the end of promoting that. What I've got here is a woman's guide to creating good people. You can Google for that. It's on Google. You just type that in inverted commas, a woman's guide to creating good people, and include with it, you probably don't even need to do that, but include with it my name, Andrew Atkin, or my blog site, Building Utopia, and it'll come up pretty much number one on the search engine. It's according to a guy, and in this PC age, I'm not supposed to have an opinion on what women should do with their kids, but hey, it's my opinion, it's out there. You can agree or disagree with it, no harm done in looking at it. And really what it focuses on is just the basics, and where we do have a huge knowledge hole is how to give birth properly for women. I mean, tremendous amount of damage is done to children through toxic birthing processes, and that's an area where you can get one hell of a bang for your buck if you just focus on, if we just if we could just get it right between conception and the first 6 months of life, that would be a revolution for our society all on its own. It really would. Infinitely more of a revolution than trying to ram everyone through tertiary education, which, we really are back to front, upside down with what we worry about with our kids in this world. Tertiary education is nothing compared to getting it right between conception and the first 6 months. Please believe that. Right, and if we can get it right between conception and the first 6 months, at least, depression, obsessive-compulsive disorder, suicide attempts, all that stuff would collapse compared to what it is today, including drug abuse and all the other social pathologies that revolve around having all that pain internalized into everyone's systems, making them terribly vulnerable to later stresses as adults, because it all just compounds on all that tremendous amount of internalized stress from the trauma. That's what trauma is on another more basic level. It's just stress that's been internalized into your brain like a constant beating drum working on you all the time. Thank you very much. That's all I want to say.